Hello everyone and welcome to my Y&R Trends channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Monday, October 13th, 2025 episode of The Young and the Restless opens in Genoa City with an uneasy calm, the kind that suggests storms are gathering beneath the surface. The morning sun spills through the Abbott mansion windows, where Jack sits alone at the table, reading a message from Kyle that leaves him uneasy. Kyle's absence from the family dinner last night didn't go unnoticed, and now Jack is beginning to fear that the tension between father and son might be heading toward another painful rift. Across the room, Diane senses something's wrong and gently touches Jack's hand, trying to reassure him that Kyle just needs time. But Jack, who has learned that peace in Genoa City never lasts long, knows better. He mutters that time doesn't heal anything when deception is involved. Diane, visibly shaken, wonders what he means, but Jack only says, "I just hope our son isn't making another mistake he'll regret." Meanwhile at Society, Kyle sits alone nursing a coffee that's long gone cold. He's staring at his phone, reading and rereading a message from Summer that he still hasn't responded to. Their relationship has been hanging by a thread ever since her discovery that he's been secretly consulting with Victor Newman about business moves at Jabot. Kyle knows how it looks, betraying his own family, but he tells himself that Victor's guidance could open doors for him that Jack would never approve of. As he sits lost in thought, Audra walks in, her confident smile cutting through his gloom like a blade. She slides into the booth across from him and says she's heard whispers that Jabot's about to make a huge change in leadership. Kyle feigns surprise, but Audra isn't fooled. She leans closer, her voice dropping to a silky whisper, saying she knows he's positioning himself for control. Kyle doesn't deny it this time. Instead, he tells her that sometimes you have to take power before it's taken from you. Audra smiles, the kind of smile that suggests danger and opportunity are the same thing in her world. Over at Newman Enterprises, Victoria is pacing her office, frustration visible in every movement. Nate has been avoiding her calls all morning, and the silence is eating away at her composure. She knows he's been distant since their last argument about loyalty, both in business and their relationship, but she didn't expect him to freeze her out completely. When he finally walks in, Victoria doesn't waste a second before confronting him. Nate insists he's not playing games. He just needed space to think about what they've become. Their professional partnership has turned toxic, tangled in emotion and mistrust. Victoria, always trying to maintain control, asks if this means he's quitting Newman Media. Nate hesitates before replying that maybe he's quitting her. The words hit her harder than she'd like to admit, and for a brief moment, the ICCO facade slips, revealing the woman who's tired of losing everyone she loves to ambition. Nate starts to walk out, but Victoria stops him and asks if he's leaving her for Elena again, or if this is about the Newmans always needing to dominate. Nate simply says, "Maybe it's about me finally choosing myself." He leaves and Victoria's expression hardens, pain morphing into determination. She whispers to herself that no one walks away from her without consequences. At the coffee house, Sharon is wiping down tables when Chance walks in, dressed casually but clearly distracted. She greets him warmly, noticing the exhaustion in his eyes. He admits he's been buried in work, but she knows there's more to it. Sharon gently asks if it's about Summer. Chance sighs, saying it's complicated. He and Summer have been growing closer, but lately she's been distant, torn between her lingering feelings for Kyle and the future she could have with Chance. Sharon, ever the voice of calm, tells him that love in Genoa City is never straightforward. Chance smiles faintly and says he's starting to see that firsthand. He appreciates Sharon's wisdom, but there's an unspoken connection between them two, a quiet chemistry that lingers in the air each time they talk. As he leaves, Sharon watches him go, her heart heavy with the knowledge that love triangles always end in heartbreak for someone. Back at the Abbott mansion, Ashley returns unexpectedly from Paris, catching everyone off guard. Tracy rushes to greet her, but it's clear Ashley's not here for a family reunion. She's holding a folder full of documents and says she's come back because she's worried about Tucker. Apparently, he's been making bold business moves overseas that could destabilize several markets, including those tied to Jabot. Jack groans, Tucker's shadow looms over every corner of their lives. Ashley admits she still has feelings for him, but she's also afraid of what he's planning. Jack tells her to stay out of it, but Ashley refuses. She says that if Tucker's crossing lines again, she needs to stop him before he ruins everything. Diane watches silently from the doorway, her expression unreadable. She knows that Tucker's chaos always spills over into the Abbott family, and she wonders whether Ashley's return will reopen old wounds they've barely begun to heal. Meanwhile, Tucker himself is in a private suite at the Grand Phoenix, pacing and muttering as he talks on the phone. He's furious that his latest acquisition deal has been delayed. Audra arrives, wearing that trademark smirk that tells him she's got information worth his attention. She updates him about Kyle's ambitions, and how he might be manipulated into taking bold steps against Jack. Tucker's interest peaks immediately. He says that if Kyle's willing to challenge Jack, maybe it's time for a little push from the outside. Audra reminds him that alliances with Abbotts never end well, but Tucker shrugs it off. For him, destruction is just another form of creation. As they toast to their latest scheme, there's an undeniable tension between them, half attraction, half distrust, because both know the other would sell them out in a heartbeat if it meant gaining power. At Crimson Lights later that afternoon, Mariah and Tessa are sitting with their baby Aria, laughing softly until Tessa's phone rings. It's her music producer from Portland, and the conversation changes everything. After hanging up, she looks at Mariah with wide eyes and says she's been offered a major opportunity to tour again. Mariah's excitement is short-lived when Tessa adds that it would mean leaving Genoa City for several months. Mariah struggles to hide her disappointment. She knows how much singing means to Tessa, but she can't imagine being apart, especially with Aria still so young. The emotional tension builds as Tessa insists she can balance both her family and career, while Mariah argues that some choices can't have it both ways. The scene ends with Tessa whispering that she can't give up her dream again, not even for love. Mariah's eyes well with tears, realizing that love sometimes asks for more than anyone should have to give. The faint, almost imperceptible click of a manicured nail against polished mahogany was the only sound that broke the silence in the Newman Enterprises penthouse office. It was a sound of profound impatience, a metronome counting down the seconds to a potential catastrophe. Victoria Newman, seated in the high-backed leather chair that had been her father's throne for decades, stared at the closed double doors as if she could see through them, through the steel and concrete of the skyscraper, all the way to the courthouse steps where her brother's fate was being decided. The air in the room was thick, heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and unspoken anxieties. Every passing minute felt like an hour, every distant ring of a phone a potential harbinger of news. She had orchestrated so much, maneuvered so many pieces on the chessboard, all leading to this single day. The wrongful termination lawsuit against Newman Enterprises was, on its surface, a financial nuisance, a petty grievance from a disgruntled former employee. But Victoria and everyone else in Genoa City who mattered knew it was about so much more. It was the opening salvo in a war for control, a proxy battle where Nick Newman was the reluctant standard-bearer for a legacy he often seemed to disdain. A victory for him would not just be a monetary settlement. It would be a validation, a public shaming of Victoria's leadership and her father's methods. It would prove that the heart of the company, the part that remembered their mother's influence, still beat faintly beneath the cold corporate exterior. A loss for him, however, would solidify her position, demonstrating that sentimentality had no place in the cutthroat world of global business. The nail stopped its tapping. Victoria's hand clenched into a fist. The waiting was its own special kind of torment, a passive state she despised. She was a woman of action, of decisive moves and immediate consequences, and this legal limbo, this reliance on the slow-turning wheels of justice, grated on her very soul. Across town, in a dimly lit corner of the Genoa City Athletic Club, the other side of this familial schism was trying and failing to find solace in physical exertion. Nick Newman landed a final punishing blow to the heavy bag, the impact sending a satisfying jolt up his arms. Sweat dripped from his brow, mingling with the dust motes dancing in the slivers of afternoon light. For him, the lawsuit was a necessary evil, a principle he felt compelled to uphold. He hadn't wanted this fight, not really. His life at the ranch, away from the relentless pressure and the moral compromises of the corporate world, was the peace he had fought hard to win. But seeing a good man, A loyal employee, tossed aside like yesterday's news for refusing to comply with an unethical order, had stirred something old and stubborn within him. It was the ghost of his father's temper mixed with his mother's unwavering sense of right and wrong. Wiping his face with a towel, he checked his phone for the 20th time. No messages. No missed calls from his lawyer. The silence was deafening. He knew what was at stake, not just for him, but for the entire family dynamic. This wasn't about hurting his sister, though their relationship was already a fractured mosaic of past betrayals and present rivalries. It was about proving that the Newman name could stand for something more than profit margins and stock valuations. Yet, a part of him, the part that still remembered building pillow forts with Victoria in the living room of their childhood home, felt a pang of guilt. He was challenging her directly, publicly. There would be no taking this back. No easy path to reconciliation once the verdict was read. The trial was a line in the sand, and he had been the one to draw it. Meanwhile, in the one place that often served as neutral ground for the warring Newman factions, the tension was just as palpable, though expressed in a different key. The Grand Phoenix Hotel bustled with its usual afternoon energy, but Sharon Rosales moved through the lobby with a distracted air. Her thoughts were not on hotel occupancy rates or guest satisfaction surveys, but on the two people whose lives were so deeply entangled with her own. She had loved both Nick and Victoria in different ways and at different times. Nick as a husband, a partner, the father of her child, and Victoria as a sometimes rival, sometimes ally, a complicated sister-in-law forged in the fires of shared history. She felt the ripples of their conflict in her very bones. Pausing by the elegant front desk, she absent-mindedly straightened a stack of brochures, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting loyalties and concerns. She wanted Nick to win, to affirm the value of compassion and integrity that she herself had always tried to embody. Yet she also understood the immense pressure Victoria was under, the weight of a legacy that was both a privilege and a prison. Sharon's phone vibrated in her pocket, and she snatched it with a haste that betrayed her inner anxiety. It wasn't news, just a reminder about a vendor meeting. Letting out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, she glanced toward the hotel's entrance, half expecting to see one of them striding through the doors, their face a mask of either triumph or defeat. The entire city, it seemed, was holding its breath, waiting for the judicial axe to fall, an event that would irrevocably alter the landscape of their lives. The epicenter of this seismic shift, of course, was the Genoa City Courthouse, an imposing building of stone and solemnity. Inside, in a hallway lined with stern portraits of judges past, the legal teams for both sides had gathered in small tense clusters. The air smelled of old paper, floor wax, and nervous anticipation. Pacing slowly near a tall window, Michael Baldwin, representing Newman Enterprises, adjusted his cufflinks for the third time in as many minutes. He was a veteran of countless legal battles, a man who had faced down murder charges and corporate espionage with a wry smile and a sharp mind, but even he felt the unique pressure of this case. It wasn't the law that was complicated, it was the people. He was not just defending a corporation. He was defending Victoria Newman's authority and, by extension, the wishes of his powerful and notoriously unforgiving father-in-law, Victor Newman. A loss here would be more than a blemish on his impressive record. It would be a personal failure in the eyes of a man who did not tolerate failure. A few feet away, the plaintiff's attorney, a younger, fiercely ambitious lawyer named Amanda Sinclair, stood with a calm composure that belied the significance of the moment. For her, this was more than just a case, it was a statement. Winning against the Newmans was a career-making prospect, a chance to prove that even the most powerful could be held accountable. She checked her watch, the smooth motion of her wrist the only sign of her own simmering anticipation. The jury had been deliberating for hours, a fact that both lawyers interpreted in their own ways. Michael saw it as a sign of complexity, that the jury was carefully weighing the overwhelming evidence he had presented about the employee's documented performance issues. Amanda saw it as a sign of doubt, that the jury was wrestling with the compelling narrative she had woven of a cruel corporation crushing a whistleblower. The heavy door to the jury room remained shut, a silent, monolithic reminder that the fate of the Newman Empire, for the moment, rested in the hands of 12 ordinary citizens. Back at Newman Enterprises, the facade of corporate calm was beginning to show hairline fractures. Victoria had moved from her desk to the panoramic window, staring down at the city she felt was hers to command. The sprawling skyline, with its gleaming towers and teeming streets, usually filled her with a sense of power and purpose. Today it felt distant, a diorama she was observing from behind a pane of glass. Her phone buzzed on the desk, a sharp, intrusive sound in the quiet room. She turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. It was a text from Michael. Not a call, which would have signaled an immediate result, but a text. Her eyes scanned the words quickly. Jury still out. Looks like it could be a while longer. Will call the second I know anything. A fresh wave of frustration washed over her. The uncertainty was a torture device, expertly applied. She thought of Nick, of his smug self-righteous certainty. She thought of her father who had, from his secluded ranch, issued only one cryptic command: handle it. The weight of that directive was immense. Handling it meant winning by any means necessary. It meant proving to Victor once and for all that she was the heir he had always wanted, the one with the steel will and the ruthless efficiency to carry the Newman name forward into the future. A loss would be interpreted as weakness, and in her father's world, weakness was the one unforgivable sin. She picked up a small, framed photograph from her desk, a childhood picture of her, Nick, and their brother Adam, taken in a time of seeming innocence. They were smiling, their arms slung around each other without a care in the world. How had it come to this? How had the bonds of family become so twisted by ambition, money, and power? She placed the frame face down on the desk. Sentiment was a luxury she could not afford, not today. The golden afternoon light was beginning to soften, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of the Genoa City Country Club, where another, more intimate drama was unfolding, one whose consequences were just as profound for those involved. In a secluded gazebo overlooking the ninth hole, Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles were engaged in a conversation that was anything but a casual chat. Their body language was a study in tension and conspiracy. Kyle, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees, spoke in a low, urgent tone. Audra, ever the picture of cool, collected ambition, listened, her head tilted, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. The topic was, as it so often was in their circles, power and the acquisition thereof. Specifically, they were dissecting the potential fallout from the Newman verdict, looking for any angle, any crack in the foundation of their rivals, that they could exploit for the benefit of Jabot Collective. A win for Nick, Kyle murmured, and Victoria's stock, both literally and figuratively, takes a massive hit. The board will get nervous. It's the perfect opportunity to push for a merger of the consumer divisions, something we've wanted for years. Audra nodded slowly, her sharp mind already racing through the possibilities. And if Victoria wins? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Kyle's face darkened slightly. Then she becomes untouchable for the foreseeable future. Victor will cement her position, and any move we make will be seen as an act of war. We need Nick to win. We need that chaos. Their alliance was one of pure, unadulterated opportunism. Kyle, desperate to step out from under his father's shadow and make his own mark, saw Audra as the perfect weapon, brilliant, ruthless, and unencumbered by family loyalty. Audra, in turn, saw Kyle as her vehicle, her path to a level of influence she could never achieve on her own. They were two sharks circling the same waters, waiting for a drop of blood to signal a feeding frenzy. The Newman family's internal strife was, for them, not a tragedy, but a business opportunity. As dusk began to settle over the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the atmosphere in the Newman ranch was one of heavy, watchful silence. Victor Newman, the patriarch, the lion in winter, sat in his study, a single lamp casting a pool of light onto his desk. He was not a man given to overt displays of anxiety. Decades of corporate warfare, personal betrayals, and life-and-death struggles had hardened him into a figure of immense, imposing stillness. He did not pace. He did not fret. He simply sat, his hands steepled, his gaze fixed on a point in the middle distance. He was aware of every development, every whispered conversation, every strategic maneuver. His sources were everywhere, his network of informants more reliable than any news service. He knew Victoria was in her office, stewing in her impatience. He knew Nick was at the gym, trying to punch his frustrations into submission. He knew about Kyle and Audra's little meeting at the club, their ambitions so transparent they were almost pathetic. He saw the entire chessboard and he was waiting. For Victor, the verdict itself was almost secondary. What mattered to him was how his children responded to it. This lawsuit was a test, one he had not orchestrated but was more than willing to use. It was a test of Victoria's resilience under fire, of her ability to lead when her authority was directly challenged. It was a test of Nick's conviction, of whether he had the stomach for a real fight or if his principles would crumble under pressure. Victor's love for his children was a deep, complex, and often contradictory thing, inextricably woven with his desire for control and his vision for his empire. He wanted a successor who was strong, but not so strong as to defy him. He wanted a family, but one that conformed to his design. The ringing of his private line cut through the silence, a sound that rarely broke the quiet of the ranch. He did not startle. He slowly, deliberately, reached for the receiver. His voice when he spoke was a low rumble, giving nothing away. Yes. The person on the other end spoke quickly, urgently. Victor's expression did not change, but his eyes, those famously piercing blue eyes, narrowed almost imperceptibly. The wait was over. The verdict was in.